The sun was sinking low over the rugged town of Dustwater Ridge, painting the sky in streaks of crimson and gold that bled into the edges of the horizon. The townsfolk had gathered in the square that evening, not for music or laughter, but for something grim. On a weathered wooden platform stood a young widow, Clara Dawson, trembling as she held her baby boy close to her chest, as though her love alone could shield him from the cruelty that had fallen upon them. The sheriff read aloud the debt left behind by her late husband, and the banker's cold eyes made it clear her freedom would be sold to pay the price. The auctioneer's voice cracked through the still air, calling bids as if he was selling cattle, not a woman and her child. Faces in the crowd shifted uneasily. Some looked away in shame, others stared with hollow indifference, and a few men grinned, ready to take advantage of her desperation. Just when it seemed mercy had died in that town, the sound of hooves broke through the whispers. A lone rider appeared at the edge of the square, his coat dust-stained, his eyes sharp as a storm. He dismounted slowly, the crowd parting as he stepped forward. "I'll take them both," he said in a low, steady voice. The man's name was Jonas Reed, a drifter with a past carved by hardship and silence. He paid the widow's debt in full, each coin landing on the table like thunder. And with that simple act, Clara's fate changed forever. The crowd dispersed, leaving behind only dust and whispers as Jonas offered his hand to help her down from the platform. His touch was firm but gentle, his eyes holding no pity, only calm honesty. He took her and the baby to a small boarding house, giving up his own room so they could rest. That night, while the rain tapped against the windows, Clara lay awake, her heart heavy with fear and confusion, but beneath it all, a spark of something new hope. Morning light came soft and golden through the thin curtains. Jonas was already awake, packing supplies and readying a wagon for travel. When Clara asked where they were going, he simply said, "To my ranch near Red Mesa Creek. It's quiet there, safe." She hesitated, uncertain of his intentions, but something in his steady voice made her believe him. They set off down the dusty trail, leaving Dustwater Ridge behind like a bad dream. The road stretched long across the Montana plains, endless fields giving way to rolling hills and whispering pines. Clara watched Jonas drive the horses with a quiet grace, his hands strong and sure. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried the weight of truth. As days passed, they shared quiet meals by the fire, the flicker of flames painting their faces in soft gold. Jonas told her about her late husband Ethan, how they'd fought together in the war, how Ethan had once saved his life. It was a bond of loyalty that had brought Jonas to her, but what grew between them was something deeper. In the silence of the wilderness, Clara began to see beyond his rugged exterior, man built of honor, carved by pain, yet still capable of kindness. He saw her strength too, the courage it took to survive, to protect her child in a world that had turned its back on her. Through storm and sunlight, their journey became a rhythm of survival and trust. One night, as thunder rolled and rain lashed against an old line shack where they'd taken shelter, Jonas built a fire to keep them warm. Clara watched him, his hands trembling from the cold, and without thinking, handed him a blanket. When Thomas, her baby, began to fuss, Jonas asked gently if he could hold him. His large, calloused hands seemed clumsy at first, but soon the baby settled in his arms, staring up at him with wide eyes. Jonas smiled a small, rare smile that lit something deep within Clara's heart. In that fragile moment, surrounded by the storm's fury, they found a piece of peace. By dawn, the rain had passed, and the land glistened fresh and alive beneath the rising sun. As they stood side by side, watching the light spread across the valley, Clara whispered, "You could have left me there." Jonas looked at her, his gaze steady and full of meaning. "Maybe I could have," he said, "but some things a man just can't ride past." When they finally reached Reed Rancher, quiet valley nestled between pine ridges with a silver creek running through it, felt like stepping into another world. The cabin was small but sturdy, smoke curling gently from its chimney. Jonas showed her around with a quiet pride, telling her, "It ain't much, but it's home." For Clara, after months of fear and wandering, it felt like sanctuary. Life at the ranch settled into a rhythm, the sound of wind through the trees, the laughter of a baby, the quiet clatter of chores shared between two people learning how to live again. Jonas rose before dawn each morning, tending cattle and fixing fences, while Clara learned to cook, clean, and breathe freely again. Thomas thrived in the open air, and Jonas often carved him little toys, his rough hands surprisingly gentle. Slowly, without either meaning to, the loneliness that haunted them both began to fade. When Jonas asked Clara to go with him to the Founders' Day festival in Cedar Bluff, she felt both nervous and excited. For the first time, she wanted to be seen not as a widow or a debt, but as a woman starting over. They danced beneath the lantern light, awkward at first, then easy, laughing like old friends. But peace on the frontier was always fragile. When a woman from Jonas's past appeared, a polished beauty named Rebecca Turner, Clara felt a sting of insecurity. Rebecca's sharp words cut deep, but Jonas's steady defense silenced them. "She's more than a guest," he told Rebecca quietly, and though the words were simple, they changed everything. On the ride home beneath the full moon, their silence was full of meaning, a fragile truth neither dared speak aloud. Then came the night Jonas didn't return. Worry drove Clara into the dark, Thomas wrapped against her chest as she rode out alone to find him. When his voice finally called her name through the wind, relief flooded through her. "You came looking for me?" he asked softly. "I couldn't just wait," she said, tears in her voice. "You matter to me, Jonas." His eyes softened, and in that quiet, firelit cabin when they returned home, he finally told her what had been growing in his heart. "I didn't save you, Clara. You saved me." His hand brushed her cheek, rough but gentle, and the walls between them finally fell. She whispered, "You already have us, and for the first time in years." Love, real, quiet, unspoken love filled the room. Outside, the wind eased, and the pines seemed to whisper their approval. And that is how the story of Jonas Reed and Clara Dawson began, not with promises of fortune or grand gestures, but with courage, kindness, and a single act of decency that changed broken lives forever. In a land shaped by hardship, they found something rare, the strength to trust again, the grace to forgive the past, and the courage to believe that love could still bloom, even in the dust and the wild winds of the old frontier.